some rich person somewhere is getting the full experience that I can't because I'm poor. That's one of the main things you don't want to do to your consumers, is make them feel like they're second rate. Anyone heard this news about Soul Calibur? About the DLC situation? They released information at Gamescom for... Oh, I forgot to grind the beans. They released information at Gamescom about Soul Calibur VI. And yeah, it has been explained. It has been explained, but I think people are kind of 50-50 about how they feel about it. Because at first people said it's gonna be a pre-order bonus, and that you can only get it as pre-order or for DLC. And then they cleared up the situation and said basically it's part of the season pass, and the season pass can be pre-ordered. But if you don't pre-order it, you can also just buy the character as DLC. And I think the reason people are stressed out about this is because it's the same thing that people have been stressed out about since Tekken Cross Street Fighter. It's not really focusing on it, but these are the Guatemala beans. So people are still pissed off about the DLC situation from Tekken Cross Street Fighter because, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, because people can't let go. Remember that movie, Frozen? Apparently nobody learned anything from it. Which is the same reason why people kind of gave BlazBlue Cross Tag a hard time, even after they explained the situation. They're like, look, the game is cheaper, that's why it's gonna have fewer characters, and we're offering DLC as an option for people who want to spend extra. Let's grind! It doesn't matter really how well you explained it. If it has the word DLC, the thing is, the OGs, they're always gonna get pissed about it because the way they remember it was paying a lot of money and getting a lot of stuff. This whole paying less and getting less stuff, and then paying full price to get more stuff, doesn't jive well with OG people. And so the DLC that they're talking about is Tira from Soul Calibur. I don't think she was in Soul Calibur 1 and 2. I'm pretty sure the first time I played her was in PSP. They're not bringing Darth Vader back. I think bringing any Star Wars character back would be a marketing mistake. There is something that's important that all companies need to be careful of if they want their game to succeed and be profitable. Whatever you charge for the base game has to feel like a satisfying amount and have the correct contents for a base game. So if you're going to charge $50 for the base game and $80 for the deluxe version, then the $50 base game needs to have $50 worth of content. But there's a part 2. And the part 2 is, it cannot be missing content, that it cannot feature DLC content if that DLC content feels like it should have been base game. Now, I'm gonna go out and say that Tira does not need to be base game content. Especially as Soul Calibur 6 is a reboot, practically, of the series, of Soul Calibur 1 and 2. Since Tira didn't show up till much later, I really don't think that people should be upset. Well, people can be upset about anything they want, but I'm not upset that she's not in the base game, and it's because I don't consider her base game content for Soul Calibur 6. Pretty basic DLC practice from another greedy company. I'm really excited for Soul Calibur 6 though. I will get it, but I don't like the DLCs are coming before the launch. Alright, so I do have another important point about that, which I'm going to explain in a moment, but these beans are ground every now and then. It's like, you're done grinding, and then it goes, there's a few more. Yeah, Soul Calibur 6 is basically a series reboot. It's going to rewrite the soul of history. Wow, my autofocus is actually functioning today. What? What a luxury. Wow, it is way too bright. Alright, so let me break this situation down for you. Soul Calibur 6 is announcing DLC before the game is out. This is one of the main problems for OGs. OH space GEEZ. There's nothing wrong with being an original player, but there is a problem for me. It may not be a problem for the other people, but there is a problem for me when you start to kick up a fuss about things that are actually going to cause developers to be unable to make games, right? You can complain as much as you like, but if these companies don't make enough money to make games, then they're not gonna make the games anymore. They're just gonna move into the oil business or some other business that actually makes real money. When companies release information about DLC, I personally think that really they can't be blamed as such. Let's say that you've got, you know, your base game. You've got 0 to 100% of your base game. And then you've got all this planned DLC, because the truth is, people get really bored if the game doesn't evolve over time. They want balance patches, they want new characters, they want new stages, they want extra story modes, which I still don't know why people keep asking for that, but they want it. And so the companies plan it. They go, okay, here's the 100% of the base game here, and then here's the extra 50% we're going to tack on later. And we're going to release it after the game is finished, or after the game is released, so that there's more stuff, so that after people buy the base game and play it for a couple weeks, they can go and download some extra stuff so that it's even more fun, because people just get a craving. They get hooked on Soul Calibur, they want more, which I think is fair enough. And so what happens is they finish building the game, and then there's an event like E3, Gamescom, or Tokyo Game Show, right? And at these events, they're holding the beta or the beta version, the alpha versions of their games. And they're showing people what they know of the base game, which is basically, 80% complete, 75% complete. If it was E3, it's probably like 50% complete. But they've got as much of the game available as possible. But they also happen to know that over the next 3 years, they're going to release Mary Sue, Kylo Ren, and the Porgs, right? These are the 3 DLC characters that you're going to get with Soul Calibur VI, right? Mary Sue, Kylo Ren, and Porgs. And they know that people are going to get hyped about it. And so, they just say it. We're going to release Mary Sue, Kylo Ren, and Porgs. It'll be DLC and available day 1 for the Porgs, and you'll just have to wait 2 years before Mary Sue comes out. That's how it goes. And then people get pissed. They're just like, why are you telling us this? It's like, I'll tell you why we're telling you this. Because we know it's there. What would you like us to do? To just not say anything? Look, we made a $50 game. It's got $50 worth of content in it. And by the way, we happen to have made a deal with Star Wars. We're going to release Porgs. We thought you might like to know. They're like, don't tell us! Don't tell us until the day it's already released. And they're like, alright. We thought you liked information. We thought you liked to know about what's coming. They're like, no! The game hasn't been released. Don't tell us anything about the DLC. Every time a company tells you something extra, people freak out. They're like, no, don't tell us anything extra. And then when they don't tell you anything extra, they're like, why won't you tell us who's coming in the game? You don't communicate with us. There's no communication. Seriously, there's no pleasing anybody in this world. Alright, so this coffee looks amazing. That's not to say I don't understand. That's not to say I don't sympathize. Because if you remember, I actually did make a video about DLC. I'm one of these vocal people who was complaining about DLC when BlazBlue Cross-Tag first announced it. I'm one of these people. Hypocrite gamer. Nihongo hypocrite. I'm one of these people. But when I do talk about these things, I don't just say, I can't believe they did it. I try to have some sort of open discussion about it. Cranberry Pudding says, "Hey man, don't often write these things out. I've really been enjoying your videos for the last while, leaving them on as I do housework, as I train in SF5, as I just relax. You've become my favorite YouTuber in the last month or so. Thanks for all the content, much appreciated." Cranberry Pudding, thank you very much for the thoughtful words. I'll tell you what, pretty much everything I've ever done on YouTube, or anything I've ever done on Twitch, has come from watching other people and thinking, I want to do that too, or I think I could do that better. And 95% of the time, if I thought, I bet I could do that better, 95% of the time, I go and make my own product and I go, this is not better than I thought it was going to be. Like, this is not better than the person I thought I was going to beat. This is actually not quite as good. But then over time, you learn your own style, and I think you get a little closer to your vision. But when I started, I was just like, I've actually made worse content. I really should just give up. But I'm kind of glad I didn't give up, because I ended up getting a lot closer to the content I had in mind, eventually. Alright, so here's another fair point. Here's a fair point about DLC, is when they sell you, first of all, a base game which isn't complete. So people were upset about Street Fighter V, because there was no arcade mode. There's pretty much, I mean, I think there was like a general story mode, but there was no cinematic story mode. I don't know if they had individual story modes either. There was very little to do in Street Fighter V when it came out, and I bought it day one. What puts a bit of a bad taste in people's mouths is when they start adding tons of DLC. To the point that if you bought all the DLC, it would cost more than the base game. And I think we're gonna get over that. I think people are gonna get over it. They're gonna go, okay, look, this is just how games are. I have to pay $60 today, but over the next 2 years, I'm gonna have to spend $200. But that's just how it is. Why? Because games are not really cartridges anymore. They're services. And if you want them to stay interesting, then they have to be supported like a service, like a restaurant. You gotta keep going in every day and you gotta keep cooking. And it wasn't like that with games before. Nowadays it's like you gotta put the game out there, then you've gotta go online, you gotta at Shinny, and you've gotta complain about all the stuff that doesn't work in the PC version of BB Tag. That's essentially what people do. And if you want people like him to have a job and actually patch games and stuff, you gotta keep paying. And that's why Photoshop is a thing. And that's why people, like, okay, OGs hate the idea of paying for Photoshop, including myself. Like, I finally updated to OS Sierra, or High Sierra. And the only reason I didn't update before today, or yesterday, on my Mac, was because I wanted to use the old version of Photoshop. But now, I'm going to have to buy the subscription version. And it sucks. It sucks. But then, if I want them to keep making a product which is high quality and continually updated and fixed all the time, that's just how it is. And it's the same thing with Street Fighter, it's the same thing with Soul Calibur. I think people are going to get over the timing issue. I do see your point. I do see that people are upset mostly about like the timing on announcing the DLC. But I think we can't really blame them, right? If you're running a company that makes video games, wouldn't it be foolish to not plan the next 3 years of DLC? When they say, how do we know that your game is going to return on its investment? They say, well, we've got this base game which is coming out for $50, and then we're going to release characters over the next 3 years. And it's going to be kind of expensive, but people love DLC, and every time we make DLC, people keep clamoring for more. So we think it's quite a good idea. They're like, okay, we'll go to Gamescom next week and go tell them about Soul Calibur VI. And they're like, can we tell them about Tira? Because people have been tweeting like every other minute about Tira, Tira, Tira. They all want the hula hoop girl. And they're like, fine, whatever. Tell them about Tira. I mean, you gotta advertise the season pass anyway. So they're like, yeah, there's gonna be a season pass, and as long as you own the season pass, which you can pre-order, Tira is gonna be available as DLC on day 1. Isn't that exciting? You all wanted her, and everyone's like, no, you gave us more. Nobody is ever happy. Now Digitizer, I think that's a fair point. DOA 5 did not did not do it right. I would for sure say that I kind of stopped playing DOA 5 when I felt that getting a complete experience out of that game was never going to be possible. And it is, actually. You don't have to buy any of those costumes, and I think you can have a very full fighting game experience in DOA 5. But because there were like, what, 6,000 costumes in DOA 5, I just felt like, oh, I'm not getting the full experience. I feel like someone else, some rich person somewhere, is getting the full experience that I can't because I'm poor. And I think that's one of the main things you don't want to do to your consumers, is make them feel like they're second rate just because they don't have the money. Whereas I think it's fair to say that maybe 75% of all gamers actually want to monetarily support these people who are making games for us. We love it so much that, for example, I bought Uni ST on Steam, even though I already own the game on PS4. I already own Uni L. I own Uni L on Steam, Uni ST on PS4, and I went and I spent extra money for no real reason other than to support the porting team. Because maybe they get it wrong sometimes, but we'd like them to have the money and support to do it better in the future, right? So, if we can get developers to release DLC in a fashion that doesn't make us feel like it's our fault that we're poor, that we can't get the full experience of this game just because we don't have money to spare, then I think they may be on a better course towards succeeding. Gaming is a necessity. Fair enough. I would say that maybe gaming was a luxury before, but the way things have gone is it has become more and more like a necessity. It's like a drug. They put games in our hands, and now we can't live without them. It's their fault. It's our fault. It doesn't really matter whose fault it is. We're addicted now. He says, as he drinks mysterious caffeinated beverage. A show about coffee is actually the ideal time to talk about addiction, huh? Right, let me get my headphones. Some companies don't deserve your pity. But then again, some do. I would say that it doesn't really matter who deserves pity and who doesn't. But I will say this, if you don't pity the companies that make the games you like, you may not get any more of those games. So whether or not they deserve the pity doesn't really matter. But if you rant and rave at Arxis enough, then maybe Arxis will disappear. And then we won't have any more Guilty Gears, or Blaze Blues, or Uni Ls, Uni STs, and Persona Ultimaxes, and basically, it's the same conversation I've had a million times. It doesn't really matter what should be. It's the result that ends up kind of screwing everyone over. So maybe they don't deserve your pity, but without them, you ain't getting no more.